el mejor poema que he escuchado hasta ahora, en serio. Y bueno, gracias nuevamente. Y bueno, ahora vamos a pasarle la palabra a Tien, que nos hablará sobre la investigación y la campaña Niñas con Igualdad de ahora, ¿no? Tien, puedes prender tu micrófono.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much, Astrid. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, and also good evening. Happy International Girls' Day. My name is Tien, and I'm from Vietnam. Currently, I'm working as a head of Youth Advisory Committee of Blind International Vietnam, and also just joining the Global Youth Influence of Blind International as well. So today, I'm so excited to share with you all about our report and also the process that we're working on the report, and also some of key findings that we have in the report. So can I have my slide, please? Thank you. So before we start our presentation about a report, so I would love to have a quick quiz that wants you guys to involve with us. So the poll from the Zoom gonna just pops up, and you're gonna choose the answer that you think. So I have like three. So I have like three. I have three questions here. So I'm not sure if we have a poll, but if not, you can just like put into your chat box the answer that you choose. So the first question, as of September 2021, how many countries have a woman head of state? Yep. All right. So because like we don't have enough time for this, so I'm gonna just like put like all the questions here, and you guys can just like think about it first. So I see like some of people like just putting B as 10. That is the correct answer for the first question. We just only have like 10 women to be the head of state for since until like September 2021. So the second question is, regarding our report that we already having a lot of like survey respondents recognize that female politicians suffer abuse and intimidation, and they are judged for how they look or dress. So can you guys get the number of the estimation of them? All right, I see like 40%, 60%. All right. Yep, you guys like almost get the answer. So the answer is B, 40%. So you can see like this is the way that we also feel really challenged when involved into the process of policy making, and it seems like we are challenged by judge for how we look or dress. Next question. This is the last questions. Out of 10 girls in the survey, so how like do you can you guess that how many of them think that women are not qualified to be political leaders? Three out of 10, 3 out of 10, 1 out of 10, oh, 5 out of 10. All right, so the answer for this question is 1 out of 10. So basically it's just only one person out of 10 girls that think that women are not qualified to be political leaders. So it means that we also like ready to take a challenge. We're ready to, you know, political participate and also like support the process of policy making here. So this is also the way for us to understand if women or girls in our survey is ready for that or not. So I'm gonna just talk more about our report. So this is our theme for the report, the State of the World's Girl this year. So our campaign's name Equal Power Now. And the theme this year is about girls, young women, and political participation. So the content of the report we cover, we're setting the scene to understand like what happened. We learn about the view of girls and young women in political participation. Then we're coming up with the conclusion. And of course, last but not least, we're gonna go with some of the recommendations and call to actions after the report finding as well. So the methodology that we are doing here is having 15 closed questions, asking from 15 and 24, 15 to 24 years old young women and girls involved into the survey. And they took part from 29 countries. And we also have an in-depth interview, which is collecting the qualitative answer from 78 girls across 7 countries. So in our report, we collect a lot of thoughts and also sharing from the girls that is setting the scene and also what they feel, what they think about the political participation of girls and young women right now. So you can see like this is how they frame their challenges that they think that is related onto justice, to fairness and the rights. They feel that politics is also like the means for society to be fair and more equitable. So this is how they're looking at the participations of girls and young women into political, right? The other things that they also share the problems that is, politicals is more about like male dominance in the sense. And people think that men are smarter than women are. So that's why this is still a problem and challenges with the stereotype from society. Yeah, so that's why we're coming up with a lot of campaigns and also empower girls and young women can raise their voice. So basically, we want to put the first brick into the wall to raise the voice of young people in general and influence the political decision on issues we care about, and especially something that related directly to our to youth. I could say like our life directly. Yeah, so in the report, we're having some of the executive summary that you can also find later in the report. So this is just a sneak peek of what we're finding out. So you can see like this is a response from our respondent that they thought participating in politics was important. And also in the report, we make sure that we also have some girls and young women that is having experience to participating or engaging with the politics to make sure that we can have full experience that when they're joining this process, and also how they see themselves standing with the political office as well. And here are some of the response that is covered in our quiz from the beginning, that 1 in 10 think that women are not qualified to be political leaders. Or you can also see another thing here is they personally been discouraging from engaging with or participating in politics. So these are numbers gonna explain in our report that you can find later. Yeah, so to start with the report, we try to define what is political participation here. So we want you guys to get on the same page with us that on the political participation is going to be voluntary activities that girls and young women undertake. So you can see it could be like formal political spaces, or this is just influence such spaces or institution. And in a broader context, could be like workplace, educational institution. So we don't talk about just only like government context for political participation. This is also workplace, education, your community, media, all like appropriate to label such as activities as political. So this is one thing that I want to clarify. So next, we're setting the scene for the report that you can also see what is the gap between like male and female in politics. So the first questions that I asked you from the beginning, how many women the head of state right now, and the woman head of government. So you can see like the number is really low here. That is just like 21% of the government minister are women right now. So what is the report talking about that I mentioned? We learn about like how politics means to girls and young women, what is the issues that they really care about, the rate of their current political leadership, and also the view of women become political leaders in their countries or community. And we're talking more about like the importance when girls and young women participate in politics and the sort of participation as well. And what can be considered as discourage or encourage of girls and young women to participate in politics. And girls and young women, how they see them in the future of the politics. So these are gonna cover in our report, and hopefully that after my presentation today, you're gonna feel really curious to looking at the report later on our website. So we're coming up with some of the conclusion, and I love you to spread this message as well. So girls and young women in all their diversity need all the support they can get to organize and mobilize to ensure that they and their organizations are fully equipped to play their part in the future in their communities and countries. So I believe that for girls and young women in all their diversity, when they involve to politic participation, they can have they can bring a lot of value and benefit to the communities or the organizations that they are working for. So with that, we're coming up with some of the recommendations, and this is a really excited part that the global youth influencer that working on. So again, we make a statement. Girls and young women in all their diversity, they have a right at local, national, or international levels to take part in the decisions that affect their life. We're standing here with all girls, calling on leaders and power holders to uphold their fundamental rights to participate. So I'm gonna break it into like four stakeholders that we want to advocate and also want to make an improvement here. So first, decision makers at all levels, they must institutionalize the meaningful and self-participation for girls and their groups. Second, national and local government must ensure access to diverse and inclusive pathways toward political participation, including resources and civic education. Government and social media companies must adopt a zero-tolerance approach to violence toward the political participation of girl activists. And last but not least, we also looking for the support from UN, government, and civic society. They should recognize girls' vital and distinct role in civil society. So that is all about the summary of our report. So last but not least, I'm gonna just share with you guys about the Youth Manifesto that we record as a global youth influencer, and I'm gonna pass the floor back to Astrid.
We believe in the potential of girls, women, and young people in all their diversity.
We aspire to be included in all decision-making spaces.
Queremos ver a más niñas y mujeres jóvenes como líderes de movimiento, activistas, agentes de cambio y políticas.
Notre manifeste appelle les décideurs à ouvrir des voies de participation sûres, inclusives, accessibles et durables.
We demand the national government and national law do more to protect our rights to participate.
Nous voulons être les pionniers et pionnières de notre propre avenir et réclamer un accès égal à des espaces de prise de décision sûrs et inclusifs.
We are tired of patriarchal norms that define our lives.
Y respirar el poder igualitario.
We call on power holders all over the world.
Listen to our voices and become part of the solution.
We ask you, what will you do to ensure that girls get equal power now?
Muchas gracias, Tian. Es importante que Tian nos haya compartido el informe de nuestra campaña, porque así podemos saber que muchas niñas queremos participar activamente en la política, pero los prejuicios sociales hacen que no podamos realizar esto, ¿no? Pero vamos a ver un conversatorio de un análisis de la experiencia personal entre Zafal y Deborah Daring, que Deborah Daring es miembro del Parlamento alemán. Así que adelante, por favor. Y gracias, Tien.
Hi.
Hi. Hello.
Yeah,
So sorry for the name. So hi Divya, namaste, greetings and hi. I'm Safal from Nepal, and my pronouns are safe in there. So my question for you, as a young woman in politician, what would your current political environment represent the diversity of our society? Has this played a role in the political participation as a girl's young woman with all the diversity, and how? Also, please introduce yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Debbie. I'm from Germany and I'm a new member of the German Bundestag, the parliament in Germany, and a member from the Green Party and responsible for the so-called development politics. And actually, now we have more young persons in the parliament, but from diversity, we are far, far away. We have only a few BIPOC persons in the parliament. There's a huge lack in the class. For example, we have more persons who studied, for example, and actually we have to do a lot. Also the parties have to do a lot. And I think it's really important that now there are more young persons in the parliament, especially young women. And also in Germany, there's a huge lack in the representation of genders. There are obvious more male politicians. There are some queer persons, but I think, yeah, we have to do a lot because we are still really white, really old, and really men overrepresented.
Oh, that was so wonderful to hear you and amazing to hear you. So adding up that, can I please hear your personal experience, the barrier that you have faced in the participating in political, also the one of the unforgettable experience that you like to share while facing the political stakeholders?
Yeah, I can talk about that for hours, but I don't have so much time. So maybe I tell you about one experience, and I think it's a good example. At the beginning, there were a lot of new young persons in the German Bundestag, and everybody was like really, they didn't know how to handle us because we were young, we dressed like young people, we talk like young people. We are not the typical politicals in suits. So for them, it was really irritated. And still until today, sometimes if I'm going to meetings, the person think I'm an intern and talking to me like an intern. And then at one point I'm like, no, I'm a member of the parliament. And it's really, yeah, it's sometimes I'm really angry about it. Sometimes I'm just laughing. But I think the thing that is behind that the people don't think that young persons can sit in the parliament. In their image of politicians are old white men. But no, politicians are also young persons, are BPOC persons, are queer persons. And I think, I mean, it's our future. So we are making decisions that are really, really important for our futures. So I think that's a really important point, that young persons go into the parliaments. And I think, for example, also the barriers for young persons that your voice get heard, yeah, it's really difficult. But I think it's so important, and you mentioned it before, because I think if young persons are, like, if I'm sitting in rounds like this one or other rounds where I can see that young women or young queer persons are in important positions where they can make decisions, where they have power, that also empowers other young women or other young queer persons, that they think they also can change the world. And I mean, in the slides before, you said 1 of 10 girls, you can imagine that she will be a politician one day. I mean, why? We are more than half of the whole world. It's our future. And I think it's really, really important that we as young persons go into the parliaments, that we make decisions, that we get power, because it's our future we are fighting for. And Sarah, maybe can, yeah.
That was so wonderful to hear you. Thank you for sharing. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe Seville, I can ask a question to you also. What are you doing? Like, what is your activism generally about? And maybe you can also share a little bit of your experience and how you are involved in it.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. So I'm Safalama from the Nepal. Currently, I'm 23 years old. I identify myself as a non-binary disabled queer person. So currently, I'm sensitizing about doing activism about the intersectionality, and also providing a facility, also sensitizing some different communities about why the intersectionality is important. Side by side, I'm involving in the Federation of Gender Sexual Minority in Nepal, where we are now currently engaging and providing and amplifying and mobilizing the queer community to the political participation, political parties to hear their voices and amplify them in the political parties. Side by side, I'm also a queer counselor. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. And because here are so many really cool young persons, sorry, Astrid, I want to say thank you for all of you, for all your activism, all your energy you put in your work. And I really, really think that we as young person, we have to connect each other. We have to empower each other. And I know that I'm in a really, really privileged position as a white woman in Germany, and I have to reflect myself, but I'm so happy to see a lot of really, really cool young persons fighting for a better world, because I think if we are enough, we can really change the world. And never give up. I know sometimes it's really difficult, but I mean, look at this room on the right side, on the left side, there are so many persons who are fighting for the same thing. So let's change the world. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you so much.
Agradecerles a Zafalia Débora, que gracias a Débora nos dio un punto de vista que no es fácil poder acceder en la política siendo niña, siendo adolescente, siendo también un joven, ¿no? Y como dijo Débora, pero estamos aquí para buscar un mejor mundo, para tratar de cambiar todos estos prejuicios y querramos vivir en un mundo igualitario, ¿no? Y bueno, entonces pasamos al siguiente bloque, que también será un diálogo entre Hikmat y Emma Theophilus, que es el miembro del Parlamento y viceministro del Ministerio de Tecnología de la Información y la Comunicación de la República de Namibia. Gracias.
Thank you, Astrid. Hikmat, can you hear me?
Yes, please. I can hear you.
Oh, wonderful.
Thank you. Hello.
Hi.
Okay. Thank you so much for the opportunity. My name is Hikmat Sungi Misani. I'm from Ghana and also a student from the University of Ghana in level 300. I'm also a youth advocate who is interested in advancing the rights of girls, especially in digital skills, education, and how climate change affects girls. I'm also currently on the Chile's ambassadorial program with UN Plan International. It's nice to meet you.
It's a pleasure to meet you too, Hikmat.
Please, I would be glad if you could tell me something little about yourself. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and happy International Girls' Day to everybody. As introduced, my name is Emma Theophilus. I am a member of Parliament and the Deputy Minister of ICT in the Republic of Namibia. It's such a pleasure to meet everybody, and especially Hikmat, who I'll be having a conversation with this afternoon. Well, I'm 26 years old and I am a lawyer by profession, but I also have qualifications in business management and African studies and gender studies from the University of South Africa. So I'm very glad to be here this afternoon to meet all of you incredible champions of girls and youth advocates for children's rights and girls' rights. And I'm so glad that we could connect on this International Girl Child Day. Over to you, Hikmat.
Thank you so much. It's actually nice seeing you, even though it's not in person, but I'm very honored to have a conversation with you this afternoon in Ghana, sitting in my room. Thank you very much. So I would like to ask a few questions. Since it's a dialogue, I'll ask you a question, then after giving me your answer, you can equally go ahead and ask me your questions. Thank you.
Sure.
My first question is, for someone that got into politics at a young age, what challenges My first question is, for someone that got into politics at a young age, your challenges did not hold you back. Would you say your gender and age affects the meaningfulness of your engagement? How? What kept you going?
Thank you for that question, Hikmat. Well, maybe just to give context. So I was appointed as Deputy Minister at the age of 23. And from the onset, in fact, on the day I was sworn in, the first question the first journalist asked me was, people are of the view that you're very young and inexperienced to hold such a position of being a member of parliament and deputy minister of a ministry of ICT. What are you going to do different to get the confidence and trust of the citizenry? And that has been the challenge, because everybody sees my age, everybody sees my gender. And because I was the first ever to hold a position of decision-making at that level, there were so many doubts and mistrust on my abilities. But that came from the whole citizenry, young and old, from my generation, from the older generation. So because it was not something familiar, people had a mistrust towards young decision makers. And the task has been to getting them to believe in my ability to lead and the qualities I possess to actually demonstrate that young people are ready to lead. And believing in my own abilities and believing in my qualities of leadership has kept me going, to not accept the doubts that were set upon myself or mistrust of my capabilities to overshadow what I could bring to the table. And I think with the efforts I've made thus far, policy change has happened and is happening. And I think I'm beginning to gain the trust of those that had doubts at the very beginning. And that's the power of young people getting to decision-making positions, because we can actually demonstrate that we are leaders and that our time to lead is now, not tomorrow, but now.
Wow, wow. We are leaders and our time to lead is now. Okay, thank you so much. That was so inspiring and it has really kept me on my toes. I'll keep going. And from what you said, I know I am a girl, very smart and powerful, and my voice matters.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much. My next, I would be glad if you could ask me a question, then maybe I'll move on to the next question I have for you. Thank you.
So my question to you, Hikmat, is, what inspired you to decide to be an advocate, an activist for girls? I look back at my journey when I was an activist for children's rights. I wanted to have rights as a young girl and wanted that same experience for other young girls. So what inspired you to be a advocate as a young girl? And if you could share your journey briefly with us on how that turned out for you and what that journey looks like today.
Okay, thank you so much. This question is really, really interesting, and I'm so honored to be having a conversation today with you and all other young people here advocating for the rights of girls. So one thing that inspired me to start advocacy or activism is my community, the community I grew up. I grew up in the northern parts of Ghana, where this place does not really welcome girls with the warmest hello. There are so many gender norms affecting girls, and I grew up in a family where these gender norms were prevalent and affected me, my siblings, and my mom. So I grew up internalizing these things. But after senior high school, I got the chance to attend a capacity building event where I was told about my rights, and I got to know that actually the things that were happening to me at home were domestic violence. So from there, I also spoke to a few friends of mine who were also going through similar issues at home. They bought the idea, then we formed a group. We started talking to our mothers and sisters about gender issues, how gender-based violence is affecting them, why they don't want girls to go to school, why they want us to get married at very young ages. So people bought the idea, and from there, we started forming a bigger network. Then at the end of the day, we formed a network called Young Female Influencers. So we see ourselves as the voice. We are representing all other women and girls. We are influential, we are girls, and we are powerful. And we know that nothing can stop us. So we started tackling gender-based violence issues at the grassroots level. And so far, the journey has been interesting, even though it has not been easy, because there are still issues coming up. People will go to my mom, they'll be attacking her why she sent me to school, because this was one of the reasons they didn't want to send girls to school. Because the moment girls get the exposure, they start talking about my rights, my rights. So it's not easy. It has not been easy, but with organizations like Plan International, they are doing so well to promote the rights of girls. And I'm so fortunate to be part of it. It has really helped me a lot in this journey. Thank you.
Wow, that's wonderful to hear about your journey. And that, you not only worked with your community, but also a support system in the form of your mom as a family anchor to help you through this journey. So I'm very happy to hear that.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'll go ahead and ask my second question. My second question is, now that you are here, Miss Emma, Your Excellency Emma, girls, young women, or young people in general, especially from minority groups, feel empowered and represented. Yet, many girls still do not trust their leaders' decisions on the issues they care about. They feel they are dismissed as being immature. As a government representative, have you tried to change this in your role? Can you kindly tell me what you have done? Thank you.
Thank you so much for that question, Hikmat. So absolutely. I think the first was to have the confidence to challenge. And with that confidence to challenge, it makes it easier to push back the biases, the stereotypes against young leaders or young female leaders at that. So one way I did it personally was, I did a few things. One, I wanted to bring young people closer to Parliament. So I have a program called Bring a Buddy to Parly. Parly is short for Parliament. And what I did was bring young people to Parliament. They meet my colleagues who are parliamentarians. They sit in the sessions when we debate in Parliament, just for them to see that Parliament is not a far away institution. It is also their home. It is their representative home. This is where their concerns can be ventilated. And they have the right to lobby parliamentarians to bring their issues to the floor. And parliamentarians have to listen to them as citizens and constituents. So by demystifying Parliament as sort of like an exclusive club of, and I think it's something the parliamentarian from Germany said, an exclusive club of older persons, primarily male in many of our contexts, is something that, you know, I've then seen as important to challenge, so that young people feel like it's something they can access. Parliament is an institution they can access, and that when they see me in the chambers, they also have to see themselves in the chambers one day. And then secondly, I think the empowerment of girls comes in all kinds of ways. Like I said earlier, confidence and assertiveness and knowledge. So as long as young women and girls are knowledgeable, they're confident and assertive, they can push back any undue biases on their leadership capabilities, on their characters and integrities. They can push back all kinds of stereotypes that are trying to define them on what a typical young woman should look like, or dress like, or be like, or talk like, what a young girl should be, humble and, you know, and not challenge status quos. So with the program I did at different levels, including teaching girls how to code, it's putting them in environments that are predominantly male, and making them believe and accept that they too belong in those spaces. And I think with confidence boosters and knowledge about systems and processes, whether at local government level, state level, or even at national level, puts girls and young women in a better position to challenge status quos and rooms that are trying to keep them out. That way, we can see more of us, people that look like us in those rooms, and feel inspired that we too one day can sit in the same spaces. So those are some of the ways I really try to instill a sense of confidence in girls and young women, to not accept undue criticism on their persona, but for them to challenge, because they have a voice, and nobody should feel that they can regulate how high or how low or how long they can speak about their own rights and their own abilities.
Wow. Thank you so much. That's amazing. You are really doing well. You are representing all the many girls and young women out there. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, Miss Emma.
Thank you so much, Hikmat. And it was such a pleasure chatting to you, and happy International Girl Child Day.
Thank you so much. Happy International Girl Child Day to you too.
Wow, es increíble saber cómo tenemos diferentes perspectivas, ¿no? De diferentes partes del mundo. Pero hay algo que nos une, ¿no? Que es que tenemos casi las mismas experiencias porque de una u otra manera la desigualdad de género nos está afectando como niñas, como mujeres, ¿no? Pero por eso estamos aquí, por eso queremos cambiar todo esto y qué bien que hoy es nuestro día. Y qué maravilloso saber que hay muchas chicas, hay muchas niñas, mujeres jóvenes que están haciendo acciones para cambiar el mundo. Y esto también nos lleva al siguiente bloque, que es también un diálogo entre Sandra y Yayatma Krikiminaike, que es enviada del secretario general de las Naciones Unidas para la Juventud. Adelante. Gracias. Gracias a Hikmat y gracias a Emma.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Astrid, for the introduction. My name is Sandra. I'm a 17-year-old girl from the United States and member of the Plan International Global Young Influencer Group, where we work to shape the annual campaign, which you all may know, this year being Equal Power Now, where we are calling on governments and decision makers to open safe, inclusive, accessible, and sustainable pathways for political participation for girls. So this year, I helped to co-write the manifesto, which is now available on the website. I also helped to spearhead and design the toolkit, which includes specific action items that young people can take and implement projects in their local communities. And right now, I'm very honored to lead this fireside chat with Ms. Jayatma Wickramanayake, the United Nations Secretary General Envoy on the Youth, on the topic of young people's political engagement in politics. So I will now pass the floor to Ms. Wickramanayake to introduce yourself.
Hello, Sandra. Good morning from New York, and happy International Day of the Girl to you and all the girls and young women joining us today. I'm Jayatma Wickramanayake, and I work as the UN Secretary General's Envoy on Youth. I'm originally from Sri Lanka, and I currently work in the United Nations to bring the United Nations closer to young people and bring young people closer to the United Nations. So I've had the pleasure in the past few years to work very closely with Plan International and every year to celebrate the International Day of the Girl with girl advocates and girl advocates, activists like you, Sandra. And I'm really excited for our conversation today. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Of course, we're so honored to have you here today. So for the first question we have is about mentorship. So mentorship can be an effective way to ensure that the energy, enthusiasm, and ideas of girls are advanced in political deliberations. Do you have any personal experience as a mentor or as a mentee? And do you think this can help to empower girls and young women who may not feel like leaders already?
Thank you, Sandra. I do believe and I agree with you that mentoring is a key tool for us to both grow personally and professionally in all stages of our lives. So when you ask about personal experience, yes, I do have mentors that mentor me, and I also have mentees that I mentor. And it's not always, like a structured program, but I'm glad to have a support system where you can just call on your peers or your people that you look up to for advice when you're struggling in professional circumstances, but also personal circumstances. I've been very lucky to not only have women leaders as my mentors, but also I have some very strong feminist men who are also my mentors and who often also has helped me shaped my career and the decisions that I take to have different perspectives. I think mentorship for girls and young women is extremely important, particularly because as girls and young women, particularly young women of color, girls from the global south, we go through some additional layers of barriers that perhaps others do not see or others do not experience. But at the same time, we don't have equal access to mentorship opportunities or even role models to look up to and learn from, right? And I think both of our speakers before, our Deputy Minister Emma and also the Member of Parliament from Germany, both mentioned that when they were in Parliament, there were very little number of people who looked like them, who spoke like them, who belonged to their generation. So I think mentorship is not like a vertical one-way stream. I see it as a 360-degree ecosystem almost, where it is intergenerational. In a mentorship experience or a relationship, it's not that only the younger person learns from the older person. I think both learns from each other, because we go through unique experience, we have different perspectives, and we approach problem solving differently. So it's a two-way stream where you learn from each other. But I think also our own peers, our own friends can also play a mentorship role, where they can horizontally look at your experience and your challenges and able to support you in different ways. So for me, mentorship is not only a relationship between two people, but it's really a community of support or an ecosystem that you build around yourself in order to support each other. In 2020, for an example, my office, we convened young women parliamentarians from around the world, and Emma and our German Member of Parliament, both, if I'm not mistaken, were also a part of that group that we convened, where young women politicians came together and discussed, what challenges they were going through in their work, and we were able to create that dialogue, share some resources, share support, but also offer that space for each other to be able to relate to each other and support each other. So I see mentorship unfolding in these different ways, depending on the different realities that we live in.
That's awesome. And I think you touched on a very important point about having male allies and male feminist supporters as well, because as much as we would love to have all the women empowerment we can get, it's also very important to bring our men in, especially those who support us, and together build up this movement. And I also very much agree, having my peers, my friends, and my parents and my friends and everyone around me be my mentor or be my kind of create a network and a support group is so important. And together we are all giving each other advice and bringing our own perspectives and opinions that I think can provide so much value, aside from being some incredible feminist or advocate. We all have our own personal experiences that we can definitely bring a sense of mentorship to each other. So my second question for you is, as young people, we have vital roles to play in political participation. However, we feel our actions are not recognized. What has the United Nations done to ensure more youth engage in politics? And can you share how girls have benefited or benefit from this?
Thank you, Sandra. And I just want to acknowledge what you said about young people feeling that their actions are not recognized. And unfortunately, this is not just a feeling or a perception, this is the reality, right? We see young people protesting on the streets or advocating, running campaigns, petitions, just like the one that you also mentioned, the manifesto, Sandra. But too often those youth-led solutions, advocacy, and voices, we fail to bring them into decision-making spaces. And here, as I mean the institutions like the UN that I work for. For an example, if you look at electoral politics, the current status is alarming. According to the Interparliamentary Union, more than half of our world's population is under the age of 30, but only about 2% of members of parliament are under the age of 30. And out of that 2%, less than 1% of young parliamentarians are young women or recognize themselves as young women. And I think these figures are unacceptable when we know that young people are already playing a critical role in transforming our societies, right? All the girls that we heard spoke this morning, for an example, you're already leading change, you're already implementing change, you're already leaders in your communities, but that leadership is not represented in our political institutions or in our formal institutions. So I think the first step to curve those figures and change those numbers and move those tables is to raise awareness and insist on approaching it as a rights issue. And I really agree with my friend Emma here, where we need to advocate for young people's political participation, not as a favor that adults or institutions can do for them, but as the realization of their fundamental human right to participate in public affairs. So when you ask for an example, what is the UN doing? We recently launched a campaign called Be Seen, Be Heard, where in more than 75 countries, we will be working with civil society actors, private sector, and the United Nations to find concrete ways to increase young people's civic and political participation. So in some countries, we'll be looking at lowering the voting age. In some countries, we'll be looking at aligning the eligibility to run for political office with voting age, because in some countries you can vote when you're 18, but you can't run for office until you're 35 or even 40 in some cases. So we want to bring those limitations down. And we also want to support establishment of youth councils, youth advisory bodies, and create meaningful ways that young people can participate in politics. And here I want to make sure that when we talk about youth, we don't see all youth as the same. As it was said many times this morning, young people in all their diversity, young women and girls, LGBTIQ young people living with disabilities, young refugees, young indigenous people, recognizing the intersectional challenges and barriers of these groups and coming up with policies and programs that cater to the conscious inclusion of these groups of young people is extremely important. So I'm looking forward to working together also with young activists like yourself, Sandra, and with Plan International and others in making sure that at least in these 75 countries in 3 years, we are able to make a huge difference when it comes to engaging young people in civic and political life. But I spoke a lot, so I want to ask you a question, Sandra. First of all, congratulations on all the work that you've been doing on girls' political participation, including the manifesto. I can't wait to hear more about it and take a look at it as well. In a perfect world that you envision, Sandra, as a young person, where young people can easily engage in politics, how would it look like if you could envision a world where it was so easy for young people to influence political decision making and be decision makers themselves? What would that world look like for you?
Yeah, really great question. And I thought your responses were so important. And I'll touch on it in my answer for what I would envision in a perfect world where young people can very easily engage in politics. But to break it down into 3 categories, I would see knowledge, representation, and invitation. And so when I talk about knowledge, I talk about the issues of misinformation and disinformation, which are 2 very prevalent issues that impact politics around the world and the way we see news. So you might know of the digital divide affecting people all over, especially people who are elderly and do not know how to engage in the internet and using technological devices. But there exists a digital divide even amongst young people, where our education is filtered, it's biased, and it pushes a political agenda or a biased agenda that impacts the way we see news and impacts the way we engage with politics. So in this perfect world, I envision specific measures put in place by organizations like the United Nations and by leaders like you and decision makers to ensure that youth stay informed while being cautious and mindful of the harms of the internet and the harms of specific political agendas that politicians tend to push out on us. So essentially a world where young people are conditioned to form our own opinions and not be persuaded or manipulated by fake news. So my second point on representation, which is very similar to what you mentioned before. So touching on the idea of mentorship and having young leaders that look like you. Young people really value having leaders that look and are similar to them, whether it be our race, our religion, the country we are from, our sexuality, or our lived experiences and our upbringings. Like you mentioned in South Asia, where there isn't a lot of representation, and only, I think you said like 2% of parliament members are under the age of 30, yet half the world is under the age of 30. So seeing these influential leaders in the classroom, in the news, or in our daily lives as mentors and as people we can go to for support, gives us a sense of reassurance and inclusion and feelings of belonging that our decision and our policies are making the world a better place and are representative from the perspective of someone who was once or is in our shoes. So young people are really interested in a politically diverse space. So a place with a bunch of people who can bring different things to the table, and people from different walks of life. Sorry, I'm in school, and if you can hear like the bell, that's very loud. Okay. So the last thing I wanted to mention is the idea of an invitation. So to put everything together, what you truly want is an extended invitation. So from governments and from decision makers, an invitation for them to hear our thoughts and concerns over the global issues that you guys always talk about in the news, but you don't include young people's opinions. So even more importantly, the strategies and the proposals and the solutions that you guys make, that before a decision is finalized, we know that as young people, our voices are brought to the table, and we have, you know, like the space to talk about how we feel about these policies and how we feel about these strategies, so that we are represented in the scope of politics, whether it be through lowering the voting age or creating a place where young people can vote on the issues that we care about, or having public forums that are open to anyone, or speaking engagements like this, like having conversations with leaders like you. We truly value this, and we feel very empowered to be in this space. So to have more of these would be incredible. Yeah, thank you. Oh wait, I believe you're muted.
Sorry, thank you. I was saying thank you very much, but also thanks for joining us from school. That really shows your commitment, and I really appreciate you being here. Just wanted to add one thing to what you said, Sandra. I think along with the invitation for young women to join these conversations, there has to also be ensured safety for them, because unfortunately I have seen, while we encourage young people to speak up, particularly for young women, unfortunately some of these very patriarchal, male-dominated bureaucratic spaces also tend to be unsafe for young women. I've seen unfortunate cases of, you know, sexual harassment and abuse happen, or sometimes on a political issue when they were active, they would go home and then, you know, they would be intimidated by the police or some fossil fuel company or a big institution that they were advocating against. So I think while we encourage young women to speak up, we should also ensure that they're protected and their rights are protected in exercising their political and civic activism. So I just wanted to add that piece, because otherwise we put that responsibility also back on young people, no, to protect themselves, and it should be, I think, the responsibility of the institutions to create those safe spaces. So thank you so much again for this conversation. I really enjoyed it, and wishing a happy International Day of the Girl to everyone here.
Thank you so much, and I'll pass the mic back on to Ashley.
Gracias, Sandra. Gracias, señorita Yayatma. Y bueno, voy a recalcar algo que dijo Sandra, que no nos veamos impactadas por estructuras tradicionales y rompamos estos paradigmas y visibilicemos nuestro trabajo de mujeres de cambio. Y siempre teniendo en cuenta de tener un entorno seguro para nosotras, ¿no? Y bueno, también quiero cerrar este bloque diciendo una máxima de la Madre Teresa de Calcuta, que dice: yo sola no puedo cambiar el mundo, pero puedo lanzar una piedra a través del agua para crear muchas ondulaciones. Y entonces esto nos genera que podemos hacer grandes cosas, solamente tenemos que estar muy unidas. Y gracias nuevamente a todos los que participaron en este bloque de diálogo. Bueno, comenzamos con otro bloque, que es una ronda de preguntas a cargo de Sicón Borero, que las revisará y también se le va a asignar a uno de los oradores. Así que hagan sus preguntas en el chat.
All right, thank you so much for giving me the floor once again. Thanks, Astrid. We have a question that has come from Hannah. The question is, can you give us a sense of direction on how we can advocate for girls in political participation? And it's coming from Hannah. Does anyone want to answer this one? Any of my fellow advocates? Or I could repeat the question again. All right. The question was, can you give us a sense of direction on how we can advocate for girls in political participation? Sandra, can you take this up? Do you mind?
Hi, wait, can you repeat the question?
Okay, the question was, can you give us a sense of direction on how we can advocate for girls in political participation?
A sense of direction for how girls can participate in political participation. Yeah. So I think within the context of the United States, I think a great way to sort of get involved in political participation in where I'm from is to just talk to local politicians, email them. Don't be afraid, because the worst thing that could happen is that they say no. And so some things I've been doing is a thing called canvassing, where we essentially like go and knock on doors on people in people's apartment buildings and ask them to vote for a particular politician. But I think the number one step before you even start knocking on doors and doing things like canvassing is to do research into like your candidates, sort of their agenda. What are their goals, and what are they hoping to accomplish as the role, or as part of their job if they were to be elected. So I think the number one thing is education, and being able to inform yourself on where these politicians stand and if they're standing for the right things. So there are plenty of politicians who do not stand for girls' rights, who do not stand for human rights. And I think that is the number one thing to differentiate yourself as a voter and as a citizen, to see where these people stand and if these are issues that I really care about and I want to support. So the first thing I would do is do research for advocating and to get involved in advocacy, because that is very important.
Yeah, that is so.
Sí, compañero, creo que tenemos otra pregunta en el chat.
Another question. Okay. So the question is, how can young men who are interested in girls' education and rights participate? Anyone to take this up? Anyone? TN, would you want to try this one? Tian or Jayatma, can you respond to this question?
I'm happy to give it a shot, Zvikamborero, if that is okay. I think, and I think Sandra mentioned this in our earlier discussion, we need male allies to support young women and girls in this fight for their rights, right? So I think the question itself about how young men and boys can participate is an important one that we all need to be thinking about. I think it starts first at a personal level, where in our own homes, where in our own families, we can make sure that girls in our families are treated equally as boys, right? So I know I grew up in a very patriarchal society, and in my community, for an example, if there are girls and boys in one family, usually boys would get the best access to education, the best food, and the boys will be not expected to do any household work, and the girls will be expected to do household work while they also continue to struggle to, complete their education. Issues like child marriage, female genital mutilation in communities, that they are prevalent. So trying to advocate from the space of your home and your own family for your sisters and for your family members, women family members, to be empowered to the same level as you as a young man is, I think, one of the best starting points that you can take. But also women's rights issues or girls' rights issues are not only issues of women and girls, right? So if there are, for an example, advocacy campaigns, if there are petitions asking to change laws or asking to allocate more financing for girls' rights, girls' education, young men and boys can also play a leading role in mobilizing their peers and mobilizing their community, and being part of those initiatives to show that for all of us, women's rights and girls' rights are human rights, and we will never achieve a more just, equal and fair world unless we empower whole of our world's population and not just one half of it. So I would say those two are two concrete ways that men and boys can be part of this fight and support women's advocacy and activism for the realization of their rights.
Yeah, that is so true. I would like to add on the thing of boys in the home, like it begins in the home. I think personally, as if I have a brother in the home, my brother can actually encourage me and empower me and, show some love that, yes, you're a girl and you need equal power. You need to also participate in politics, encouraging me to do better than I am. I think personally, this is very encouraging, and it would also help me to empower myself and to empower other women to participate in politics. So already he is involved in this participation in politics because he's empowering and encouraging me. So yeah, that is great. Thank you so much. Can I leave this floor to Astrid now? Astrid?
Ya, vi que hay una pregunta para mí antes de cerrar la sesión de preguntas que dice, un momento. Ajá, dice Zoe que le gustaría escuchar de mi parte sobre mi experiencia en la creación de la campaña. Pues quiero decir que, para qué les voy a mentir, para mí fue algo muy increíble, ya que pude conocer diversas culturas, ¿no? Y bueno, aunque las sesiones eran muy temprano, a eso de las 8 de la mañana en Perú, igual los disfruté bastante junto a nuestra facilitadora, que es Ifigenia, y también los chicos que están involucrados en los jóvenes influenciadores globales. Bueno, también hicimos diversas actividades para la casa que no eran tarea, y recuerdo una de ellas que era un árbol, ¿verdad? Donde las raíces eran el problema y las hojas eran las consecuencias. y también había un viento que trataba de derrumbar este árbol, ¿verdad? Y el árbol se trataba sobre cómo hacía, o sea, por qué se impedía, ¿no? Que los jóvenes podían participar políticamente. Y bueno, eso siempre lo voy a recordar. También tuve bastantes sesiones y sobre, o sea, cómo crear la campaña, lo que vamos a hacer para el próximo año también, ¿no? La verdad fue muy satisfactorio ver, o sea, cómo yo pude crecer personalmente a partir de las sesiones, ¿no? Y bueno, también como las mujeres enfrentamos desafíos enfocados en dar soluciones sociales y ambientales que nos empoderen y a las mujeres y por ende que ayuden a reducir la brecha de género tan marcada en la sociedad. Y bueno, entonces con esto cierro la ronda de preguntas, ¿no? Que ahora es el turno de tomar la acción. Y vamos a hacer, bueno, espero que tengan algunas ideas que les voy a dar, que puedan anotar o tenerlas en cuenta de cómo podemos tomar acción frente a esta campaña, ¿no? Podemos promover el manifiesto utilizando los hashtags no sé si pueden ver, pero aquí dice Niñas al Poder, que también lo voy a escribir en el chat, ¿verdad? También podemos compartir el manifiesto en nuestras redes sociales y con nuestra comunidad para animarles a actuar. Y también pueden etiquetarlos y también enviar una copia por correo electrónico, solicitar una reunión y entregarla en persona, ¿no? También podemos organizar un taller virtual para desarrollar las habilidades y capacitaciones en la red para pasar a la acción y dar impulso a la campaña. También podemos compartir el manifiesto a través de los grupos de WhatsApp, ¿no? Que existen. Y podemos organizar un día de acción en el que nuestra red acuerde compartir ampliamente el manifiesto y también podemos compartir el éxito de la campaña con el grupo de Plan International. Y así de esta manera podemos hacer acciones para trabajar con la campaña, ¿no? Y bueno, quiero decirles que ya estamos terminando nuestra conferencia global. No sé si alguien quiera decir algunas palabras antes de culminar. No, si nadie quiere decir algo, bueno, procedo a culminar ya la conferencia.
Jospin voudrait prendre la parole.
¿Perdón?
Bonjour.
Sí, claro, adelante.
Moi, c'est Jospin Amani, je suis en RDC.
No, it also said about Bitcoin of all things.
Oui, je ne sais pas si vous m'entendez. Allô? Je ne sais pas si vous m'entendez.
Sí se oye, sí se oye.
Ok, je disais, moi, c'est Jospin Amani, je suis en RDC. Bon, j'avais juste une préoccupation. Y a-t-il une possibilité de nous partager peut-être le lien d'une plateforme où nous pouvons partager parfois les actions et ou des échanges avec d'autres organisations au niveau d'autres pays ou d'autres régions pour la capacitation? Merci beaucoup.
¿Alguno de los oradores podrá responder la pregunta? ¿Podría volver a repetir la pregunta, por favor?
Ah oui, je disais, y a-t-il une plateforme qui est réservée pour des organisations afin de partager l'expérience et ou même les actions afin de permettre la performance dans nos actions sur terrain.
La verdad, no podría responderte esa pregunta porque no tengo conocimiento sobre eso, pero a no de ser que no tengamos, podríamos crear, ¿no? Como jóvenes influenciadores, también hacer un trabajo articulado con las otras organizaciones globales y así poder, también contar nuestra experiencia, también hacer trabajos, ¿no? Que queramos hacer. Aquí Shiv está diciendo que si se le pueden conectar con él. No sé si alguno de los anfitriones, confitriones puedan hacerlo.
I was going to quickly add that we don't currently, Plan International, have a network that we can all sort of share our progress and performance on. However, as shown in this slide, we have hashtags that are affiliated with Plan International that you can definitely use as part of your social media engagement to put hashtag Equal Power Now or the other ones. And we'd be happy to share and, share your performance, and people will be able to see your posts through that. So you can also tag Plan International, and those are all great ways to sort of get your advocacy out there.
Gracias. Vuelvo a repetir, Chip pregunta que si se le puede conectar con él. No sé si hará alguna pregunta, algún comentario al final. Esto va para los anfitriones o confitriones.
Oui, on voudrait être connecté avec les autres organisations ayant la même vision. C'est important, je pense, ça nous facilite d'apprendre plus.
Sí, gracias. Y bueno, ya hemos llegado al final. Esperamos contentamente que todo que todo lo hablado los tengan todos, todas y todas en cuenta. Pues agradecerles por haber participado en la conferencia global. A ustedes, a los Global Young Influencers, a los jóvenes influenciadores global, a nuestros facilitadores y que podamos hacer un trabajo articulado en base de esto. Hasta la próxima vez. Gracias.